Have you ever been judged in a way that stripped you of your dignity before you even had a chance to speak? Imagine standing in public, your achievements erased in an instant, while strangers whisper and decide who they think you are. This is where our story begins. At the heart of Newport International Airport's Terminal D, the evening rush was in full swing. Travelers hurried through security, flight announcements echoed overhead, and the low hum of conversation filled the air. At Gate 58, two sisters sat quietly, their first-class boarding passes tucked neatly into their hands. Ava and Lila Johnson, twin girls just 17 years old, looked like any other young travelers. Dressed in smart blazers and crisp shoes, their posture was confident, and their energy carried the kind of calm assurance only people who knew they belonged could show. But that was the problem. Their confidence didn't sit well with everyone. A uniformed gate agent, Paula Green, had been watching them from behind the counter. Paula was a 15-year veteran of the airline, a woman who had seen thousands of passengers pass by. Yet something about the twins made her uneasy. Their clothes were too neat, their jewelry too refined, and their tickets, first class, were far too expensive for teenagers, at least in her eyes. She walked over, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. Her voice carried across the gate louder than it needed to be. "Excuse me, girls. I need to verify something about your tickets." Ava looked up first, blinking in confusion. She raised the boarding passes politely, her voice steady. "Is there a problem?" Paula's eyes narrowed as she snatched the tickets from Ava's hand, scanning them quickly. She didn't like what she saw, not because the tickets were wrong, but because they were right. "These seats," Paula said, her tone stiff. "How exactly did you purchase them?" Her words weren't just a question. They were an accusation. Lila, the calmer of the two, kept her voice level. "With our credit cards," Paula's lips pressed into a thin line. Her voice rose so others nearby could hear. "I'm going to need additional verification. We've had a lot of fraudulent bookings recently." Heads turned. Passengers waiting to board started whispering. Some leaned closer. Others shook their heads, pretending not to listen but secretly watching. The twins exchanged a quick glance. They knew what was happening. It wasn't about fraud. It was about perception. Have you ever been treated as if success was impossible for you, before you could even explain yourself? This moment right here was the opening of that wound. Ava took a slow breath, keeping her hands from shaking. "Here's our confirmation email," she said, opening her phone. "And the receipts. The payments are all there." She held the phone out, but Paula only gave it a quick, dismissive glance. These could be fake. Corporate policy requires additional checks for irregular passengers. "Irregular?" Lila asked, her calm tone cracking ever so slightly. "You know exactly what I mean," Paula replied coldly. Her arms folded. Her foot tapped. Her voice dripped with condescension. The twins knew then this wasn't a routine check. This was a challenge, and they weren't the only ones noticing. Around them, whispers spread like wildfire. "They don't look like they belong in first class. Probably using their parents' money." Teenagers these days. The sting of judgment thickened the air. Ava and Lila could feel every eye on them, and yet they stayed still. Inside their blazers rested two identical cards. Platinum, embossed, unmistakable. They were more than enough proof, but the girls didn't reach for them. Instead, Lila slid her phone out and tapped a button. A small notification popped up. "Lila J17 has started a live video." Within seconds, 47 viewers joined. Then 100. Then more. The story was no longer private. What happened next would change everything. The number on Lila's screen climbed fast. 100 viewers. Then 300. Comments started flooding in. "What's going on? Why are they bothering you? This looks wrong. Keep recording." Ava held her phone steady, displaying the receipts again, her voice polite but firm. "These tickets were paid for. They are ours." Paula's jaw tightened. She waved at the gate podium. "Supervisor to Gate 58, now." Moments later, a man appeared, short, jittery, adjusting his tie as though it were strangling him. His name badge read Eric Lang. His tone carried authority but no warmth. "What seems to be the problem here? These girls claim to have first-class seats," Paula explained loudly. "But obviously there's been an error." The whispers from the crowd grew heavier. A man in a suit leaned to his wife and muttered, "Probably got upgraded by mistake. Kids don't belong up there. Lila's phone buzzed. Missed call from Dad. Another from their family attorney. A third from the company secretary. She declined them all. She wanted the world to see this without interference. The live stream jumped past 400 viewers. Then 600. Eric glanced at the tickets, typing rapidly on his laptop. His brows furrowed, but he didn't share what he saw. Instead, he sighed. Girls, listen. Just take seats in economy. Let's not make this harder than it has to be. I'm sure your parents will understand. Ava reached into her wallet, pulling out a lounge wristband that glittered faintly in the light. It was proof they had been granted entry earlier. She also had a card inside, but she kept it tucked away. She held the wristband high. We have every right to board in first class. Paula gave a laugh that cut sharp as glass. Rights are for paying passengers. And I doubt you paid for these. The atmosphere thickened. Phones rose across the gate area. Strangers filmed openly. Others whispered uncomfortably, unwilling to intervene but unable to look away. An elderly black woman stepped forward. Her voice was soft but resolute. Excuse me, girls. I can help pay for an upgrade if that will ease this trouble. Ava's lips curved in a small, grateful smile. She shook her head. Thank you, ma'am, but we already have our seats. The radio at Paula's hip crackled. Gate 58, boarding begins in 5. Status? Minor issue, she replied quickly, her voice edged with irritation. Awaiting clearance from supervisor. Behind her, the suited businessman grew impatient. He stepped closer, his tone dripping annoyance. Some of us have important flights to catch. Can't you just remove them? Eric offered him an apologetic nod. We're handling it, sir. The live stream number ticked past 1200. Comments flew faster. This is racial profiling. Unbelievable. Stay strong. Call the media. The crowd's whispers thickened into a storm. Lila's hands trembled faintly, but her voice carried calm steel as she kept filming. These tickets are ours, and we are not moving. Eric sighed, frustration spreading across his features. He turned to Paula, lowering his voice but not enough to escape the microphones now catching everything. The system shows nothing wrong. The tickets are legitimate. Paula's eyes hardened. Then the system must be wrong. Look at them. They couldn't possibly afford this. A hush swept the gate. Her words lingered in the air, ugly and undeniable. From the side, a new voice rose. We're looking at them, said a woman with a camera slung across her shoulder. She clicked record. And so is everyone else. The live stream counter spiked. The story was no longer whispers in a terminal. It was a spectacle unraveling before the eyes of thousands. And it was only the beginning. The live stream climbed past 2,000 viewers, and every passing second felt heavier than the last. Passengers shifted uneasily, some filming, some whispering, some shaking their heads at the unfolding spectacle. Eric pressed his laptop closer to his chest as though shielding himself. This is getting out of hand, he muttered, though his voice was caught by more than one phone microphone. Paula's face was flushed now, caught between frustration and fear. I'm calling security, she snapped, reaching for her radio. Is that really necessary? A flight attendant asked gently from the jet bridge. Her name tag read Renee Alvarez, and though her tone was calm, her eyes flickered with concern. They seem like respectful young women. Respectful? Paula barked. Nice girls don't scam their way into first class. Ava's phone buzzed again. This time the screen flashed Dad, emergency line. She glanced at her sister. Lila gave the smallest of nods, but Ava declined the call once more. Her voice dropped low, steady. We can handle this ourselves. The tension thickened until it was suffocating. Every second the crowd pressed closer. Phones hovered like a wall of glowing eyes. The live stream jumped to 5,000 viewers. 2 uniformed officers appeared at the edge of the gate, their radios strapped tightly to their shoulders. The taller one, name tag Rodriguez, looked uneasy as he stepped forward. His partner, Officer King, wore a mask of professionalism but kept his eyes sharp. Ladies, Rodriguez said quietly, we need you to come with us. Ava blinked. Come with you? For what? You're disrupting the boarding process, King replied evenly. That's grounds for removal. Lila's voice did not waver as her phone recorded every second. We're standing here silently. We're holding valid tickets. If there's a disruption, it isn't coming from us. The crowd stirred at her words. Someone called out, she's right. Another voice added, they haven't done anything wrong. Paula crossed her arms, her triumphant smile returning now that the officers were present. It's procedure. Just get them out of the way. But not everyone agreed. The elderly black woman from before stepped forward again, her voice ringing steady with quiet courage. Officers, I've been here this entire time. These young ladies have shown nothing but respect. They've done exactly what was asked of them. A hush rippled. The crowd shifted, many realizing the weight of what they were witnessing. And then a younger mother with 2 children on her hip spoke up, her voice trembling with emotion. My daughter is watching this live stream right now. What am I supposed to tell her about justice and fairness when this is what she sees? This isn't about justice, Paula cut in sharply. This is about procedure. But before her words could take root, another voice cut through the air. A black businessman in a tailored suit who had been silent until now stepped closer. His voice was low, deliberate, and carried weight. I fly first class every single week. No one has ever asked me to prove I could afford my seat. That's different, Paula shot back without thinking. His eyes narrowed. How is it different? For the first time, Paula's face lost color. The weight of her words, spoken so freely before, now hung like a blade over her. She glanced around for support, but fewer eyes met hers now. The clock ticked forward. Boarding should have already begun. But the gate had transformed into something else entirely. A stage where prejudice and dignity clashed under the lens of thousands of cameras. The live stream count surged past 10,000. Hashtags were already forming. People across the world were beginning to notice, and Ava and Lila knew the moment was coming. The moment they'd been trained for their entire lives. They gave each other a look that said everything without words. 10 seconds. 10 seconds to see who would rise to defend them and who would fail. The officers stepped closer. Rodriguez reached out gently toward Ava's arm. His hand hovered, hesitant. The crowd leaned in as though pulled by a string. The silence was deafening. And then Ava opened her blazer. The card clipped inside gleamed in the sterile airport light, small but powerful enough to stop Rodriguez in his tracks. He leaned closer, reading the text aloud without realizing. A. Johnson, board observer, J&H Global. Lila opened her blazer too. Her card matched, gasps erupted, phones rose higher, and then, almost like a spark catching fire, the whispers began racing through the crowd. J&H Global? Isn't that the aerospace giant? They built half this terminal. Wait, aren't those the daughters of James Johnson? The livestream viewer count exploded past 20,000. Comments flew faster than the sisters could read. Paula's confident smirk shattered. Eric's face went pale as paper, and Rodriguez's hand slowly fell away from Ava's arm, his eyes widening as realization hit him. The tide had shifted, and the world was about to find out just how wrong this moment could become. The name spread like a wildfire no one could contain. J&H Global, the corporation tied to aerospace contracts, defense systems, and infrastructure projects worth billions. A company that funded the very terminal everyone was standing in. Phones lit up with frantic searches. Articles popped up on screens, read aloud in disbelief. Annual revenue, $12 billion. Major contracts with the airline. James Johnson, CEO, widower, father of twin daughters. Every head turned back to Ava and Lila. The whispers hardened into stunned silence. Paula's lips parted, but no sound came out. Eric clutched his laptop, typing furiously, his eyes darting from screen to crowd. On his monitor, contract terms glared back at him. Anti-discrimination clauses. Vendor agreements. Binding obligations with J&H Global's name stamped on every line. Jennifer Wells, the district supervisor, appeared on Eric's screen through a shaky emergency video call. Her expression was stern, her tone sharp. What's the situation, Eric? Eric angled the tablet toward the twins. They claim first-class seats. Paula, thinks their tickets are fake. Paula leaned into the camera, desperate. They're minors. Probably using stolen cards. I've seen this before. The twins stood perfectly still, their faces composed, though inside their hearts pounded like drums. The live stream count shot past 30,000. Comments flashed faster than light. This is insane. They're handling this with so much grace. Don't let them push you out. Wells studied the girls through the pixelated feed, her tone flat. Minors can't purchase first-class tickets without adult authorization. Remove them from the boarding area. The crowd stirred with unease. A murmur of disapproval rippled. The elderly woman shook her head sadly. The businessman clenched his jaw. "Ma'am," Ava said clearly, speaking directly into the camera, "we have proper identification, proof of payment, and confirmed seats. We're requesting fair treatment." Wells' eyes narrowed. "Young lady, I don't appreciate your attitude. Security, escort them out." Renee, the flight attendant, stepped closer, her voice firm. "With respect, they've shown nothing but cooperation. Stay out of this," Wells snapped. Two security officers stepped forward again, tension building in every movement. Phones rose higher. The live stream passed 50,000. A trending hashtag formed in real time. But then, as Rodriguez moved toward them again, Lila's phone buzzed with a call she couldn't ignore. The screen glowed. "Dad, emergency line." She and Ava exchanged a look. For the first time, their calm cracked into something sharper. Ava pressed decline once more, whispering, 10 seconds. Let's see who speaks up." The crowd seemed to hold its breath, and then the voices started to rise. The elderly woman again. "They've done nothing wrong." The young mother. "My children are watching. They'll remember this." The businessman. "I've flown this airline for 15 years. Never once have I been asked to prove I belonged in first class." "How is this different?" he demanded. Paula's face flushed red, her confidence unraveling. Because, her words crumbled. She turned, but this time no sympathetic faces met her gaze. The clock ticked forward. Boarding delayed. The crowd restless. Phones recording every angle. And then Ava reached for her phone at last. She scrolled to a contact labeled simply legal. One tap, and a crisp voice answered within a single ring. J&H Global Legal Department. "This is Catherine." Ava's tone was calm, steady, but her words cut like steel. "This is Ava Johnson. Authentication Delta 77 Charlie. We have a discrimination incident at Newport International Gate 58. Full documentation package required." The line went quiet for half a beat, then Catherine's voice sharpened. "Understood, Miss Johnson. Are you and your sister safe? Live stream active. Witness count over 50,000. Legal team en route. Your father will be notified immediately." The call ended. Ava slipped her phone back into her pocket, her face unreadable. A hush fell over the gate. Even the air seemed to pause. The officers stepped back uncertain. Paula's hands trembled. Eric's typing slowed to a crawl. And Jennifer Wells's face on the tablet grew visibly paler. The silence broke with gasps as passengers refreshed their feeds. Articles about J&H Global filled the trending bar. Tweets about the incident exploded into the national spotlight. And then came the sound no one expected. An unmistakable hum. Low and powerful, vibrating through the terminal windows. Every head turned toward the tarmac. A sleek corporate jet sat waiting, its engines alive, its polished fuselage gleaming with the bold crest of J&H Global. And in the cockpit window, a man in uniform spoke into his headset, his posture taut with command. It was him, James Johnson, their father. And the entire terminal realized in that moment that this was no ordinary dispute. It was a storm about to break wide open. The hum of the engines outside filled the terminal like a heartbeat, steady and commanding. Eyes stayed fixed on the jet, the crest of J&H Global gleaming in the fading light. The man inside adjusted his headset, his movements deliberate, controlled. Lila's phone lit up once more. This time, Ava didn't hesitate. She pressed accept and placed the call on speaker. "Ava? Lila, what's taking so long?" The voice carried through the gate, deep, calm, but edged with authority. James Johnson's tone was not one of a father casually checking in. It was the voice of a man accustomed to instant compliance. "Hi, Dad," Ava said, her words clear. "We're having a small issue at the gate. Some confusion about our tickets." The word confusion rolled like thunder. The crowd shifted. Phones lifted higher. The live stream surged past 80,000 viewers. James's voice dropped in temperature. "What kind of confusion?" Captain Renee Alvarez, sensing the weight of the moment, stepped forward, her voice steady. "Mr. Johnson, this is Captain Alvarez. I apologize. We're resolving a minor administrative issue." "I've been listening to tower communications," James said slowly. "My daughters were supposed to board 15 minutes ago. Yet here I sit waiting. Explain this situation." Before Renee could answer, another voice cut in, Jennifer Wells from the tablet. Her face was rigid, her words clipped. "Mr. Johnson, this is Jennifer Wells, District Supervisor." There was a misunderstanding about seat verification. A mistake, nothing more. Seat verification? James repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Lila spoke up, her tone sharp with controlled anger. Dad, they said our tickets were fake. They called security. They tried to remove us. The silence stretched long enough for everyone to hear the change in pitch outside as the corporate jet's engines rumbled louder, like an echo of James's rising fury. They called security, he said at last. Each word weighted like steel. On my daughters. For having tickets they paid for? Officer Rodriguez stepped forward, his voice careful. Sir, we were just responding to a call. We never actually— Officer, your name? James interrupted. Rodriguez, sir. Terminal security. Officer Rodriguez, James replied evenly. Your professionalism has been noted. Expect a call from our security coordinator. You'll receive additional training opportunities. Rodriguez blinked in surprise, then gave a slow nod. Now, James continued, his voice sharpening again, I want to know exactly who made the decision to call security on my daughters. Every head turned toward Paula, her face drained of color. But it was Ava who pointed directly at her and then at the tablet. Gate Agent Paula Green, District Supervisor Jennifer Wells. There was no escaping it now. You're both still present? James asked. Yes, sir, Paula stammered, her voice barely audible. Yes, Mr. Johnson, Wells replied through clenched teeth. Good, James said. Then you'll hear this directly, along with the thousands already listening. His voice rose slightly, no longer just a father's voice, but that of a corporate leader addressing a boardroom. J&H Global maintains $860 million in annual contracts with your airline. Section 14.3 of our agreement specifically requires non-discriminatory service to all Johnson family members and employees. That section exists because discrimination is not a hypothetical risk. It is a reality. And tonight it happened at Gate 58. The crowd gasped. The live stream hit 100,000. The hashtag #DearTwinsAtGate58 climbed the national feed. Wells tried to interject. Mr. Johnson, I assure you, this was an isolated— Isolated? James's voice cut like a blade. My daughters have flown first class since they were 10 years old. Not once have they been questioned. Not once have they been treated as intruders. What changed today? I'll tell you. Today they flew alone. Today, without me beside them, they were treated as though their presence in first class was impossible. As though their skin and their age dictated their worth. The silence was unbearable. The weight of truth pressed against every ear in the terminal. Paula tried to speak, her voice trembling. Sir, I never mentioned race. You didn't have to, Ava said firmly. You called us irregular. You said these seats weren't for people like us. You assumed we were criminals before asking a single question. The crowd shifted, restless, angry. Phones caught every word. Wells's face tightened on the screen, but her eyes betrayed fear. Mr. Johnson, a journalist's voice cut through. The blogger with the camera. What will you do about this? James paused, his voice measured. First, I will require written apologies from both Ms. Green and Ms. Wells within 24 hours. Not corporate statements, personal letters acknowledging the harm they caused. Of course, Wells said quickly. Second, James continued, I will mandate comprehensive bias training for all customer service staff at this airport within 60 days. Not a video. Real training with measurable results. That will be costly, Wells tried weakly. Costly? James's voice thundered. J&H Global spent $860 million with your airline last year. The cost of training is nothing. Murmurs of approval rose from the crowd. Phones shook as hands typed furious comments. Third, a new policy will be created, the Passenger Dignity Protocol. No customer will be judged by appearance, age, or background when boarding. And fourth, there will be independent audits with results made public. No more silence, his voice softened just slightly. And finally, my daughters will know that their dignity is worth more than any contract, any profit, any deal. Ava, Lila, are you ready to come home? Ava's chin lifted. No, Dad, we want to take this flight. We paid for our seats. We'll use them. James's voice carried pride and command. Then you will use them. Captain Alvarez, I trust there will be no further delays. None, sir, she replied without hesitation. The call ended. The silence it left behind was crushing. The live stream surged past 150,000. Passengers whispered, eyes wide. Paula stood frozen, her face ashen. Wells's expression was tight with defeat. and Ava and Lila held their boarding passes higher, their presence radiating the dignity no one could deny anymore. The gate was still buzzing when Paula's trembling hands finally reached for the scanner. She barely met their eyes as she whispered, "Boarding passes, please." Ava and Lila handed them over with calm dignity. The machine beeped its approval. Paula swallowed hard. "Welcome aboard." The twins walked through the jet bridge together, heads held high while behind them the terminal erupted in a storm of voices, cameras, and furious debate. On the tarmac, the sleek J&H Global jet still waited, its engines humming like a reminder that power could watch from anywhere. But the real shift was only beginning. In the days that followed, the incident at Gate 58 swept across the nation. The live stream, saved and reshared, reached over 15 million views. News anchors debated it, civil rights leaders highlighted it, and travelers everywhere whispered about the two sisters who refused to back down. The airline's board moved quickly. Paula Green was reassigned to extensive training, forced to sit through 40 hours of scenarios where her own assumptions were laid bare. When asked what she learned, her voice cracked with shame. "I assumed two young black women couldn't belong in first class. I treated them as suspects instead of customers. I will never make that mistake again." Jennifer Wells was ordered to deliver a public apology. The video, viewed over 2 million times, showed her admitting what few corporate leaders ever say. "I failed in my duty to lead without prejudice. I allowed bias to dictate my actions. I am committed to change." The airline launched the Passenger Dignity Protocol across all hubs. Every gate agent, every attendant, every officer received mandatory bias training. An app called Dignity Check allowed passengers to rate interactions in real time, and those ratings were audited monthly. Any sign of discrimination triggered retraining. Ava and Lila became more than passengers. They became voices. The airline asked them to serve as youth ambassadors for inclusion initiatives. They spoke at conferences, their words shaping the culture of travel itself. "We didn't want revenge," Ava said at one gathering of executives. "We wanted education. We wanted change so that no one else would face what we faced." Their father, James Johnson, went further. J&H Global inserted anti-discrimination clauses into every contract with vendors and partners. Entire industries began revising their standards. Hotels, car rentals, even retail stores created their own dignity protocols. What started at one gate began reshaping how companies treated customers everywhere. The sisters didn't stop there. They founded the Journey Scholarship Fund, helping young people from underrepresented communities travel and see the world. Hundreds of students took their first flights through the program. Each one returned with wider eyes, broader dreams, and a new sense of possibility. In classrooms, professors taught the Gate 58 case as an example of systemic bias and the power of public accountability. Students debated it, dissected it, and learned from it. In airports, staff whispered about it like legend, a reminder that anyone at any moment could be live-streamed into history. Years passed, but the memory of that night remained sharp. Ava pursued law, determined to fight injustice with the weapon of education. Lila studied business ethics, determined to hold corporations accountable for the choices they made. Together they carried the story of that evening as both a burden and a torch. Even Paula, the gate agent who had once stood against them, changed. She later introduced herself at a diversity seminar with a confession that silenced the room. "I was the one who tried to stop them. I was wrong. Let me tell you what I've learned since then." The world came to know their story not as a tale of privilege, but of dignity, because Ava and Lila proved that true power isn't in money, or contracts, or even the loudest voice in the room. True power is in standing tall, in refusing to bow, and in demanding respect when others would deny it. And so, the lesson spread far beyond Newport International. It spread into boardrooms and classrooms, into training manuals and government hearings. One Friday night at a gate had turned into a movement. The hashtags faded with time, but the memory endured in every policy change, every training session, every traveler treated with fairness who might not have been before. And for two young women who once stood accused of not belonging, the truth was simple. They had not only belonged, they had changed the world they walked into. Respect was no longer optional. It was the new standard.